Right now, the uncomfortable truth is this. The world is not ruled by the most intelligent, the most ethical, or the most capable men. It is ruled by those who project certainty. Look around you. In every workplace, in every circle of influence, in every room where decisions are made, there is always someone less skilled, less qualified, even less deserving who somehow sits in the position of power. And you wonder how they got there. The answer is painfully simple. They walk, talk, and breathe as if they were destined to own it all. Their voice never trembles, their eyes never dart around seeking approval, and their movements signal an authority that others instinctively obey. People don't follow them because they're the best. They follow them because they appear unshakable. And as long as the appearance of certainty exists, the world treats it as truth. Meanwhile, men like you, men with potential, men with knowledge and ability, hesitate. You calculate endlessly, waiting for the right words, the right time, the right sign. You overthink until the opportunity has already been seized by someone else. And here lies the brutal reality. Life doesn't reward the most prepared. It rewards the most certain. Machiavelli knew this long before modern psychology gave it a name. He understood that hesitation kills power, that doubt poisons authority, and that the man who pauses too long will always end up serving the man who never pauses at all. He saw it in royal courts where kings relied not on wisdom, but on the illusion of control, where advisors who spoke with fire commanded more loyalty than generals who strategized in silence. The bold advanced, the hesitant disappeared. And this is not just history, it is your life right now. Every time you stay quiet when you should have spoken, every time you wait for someone else to give permission, every time you soften your presence to avoid judgment, you are giving away pieces of your crown. You may not see it immediately, but the cost is enormous. That promotion that slipped to someone less capable? Confidence. That relationship where you were overlooked for someone else? Confidence. That negotiation where you settled for less because you didn't assert yourself? Confidence. The world does not crown the worthy, it crowns the certain. And if you don't start carrying yourself as if you deserve power, someone else will take it and wear it while you stand on the sidelines, wondering why your preparation wasn't enough. This is the first law of dangerous confidence. Stop believing that competence will speak for itself. It won't. In fact, competence without presence is invisible. People are not logical creatures, they are emotional. They decide not with evidence but with instinct. And instinct bows to certainty, not to truth. The moment you open your mouth with hesitation, the moment your body language betrays doubt, you've already lost. Not because you were wrong, but because you didn't sound unshakably right. And this is why men weaker than you are winning right now. They act with conviction, and the world bends. You wait for perfection, and the world ignores you. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors the bold, not the worthy, and until you burn this truth into your identity, you will keep watching opportunities vanish into the hands of men who had nothing but the courage to look certain. Confidence is not a feeling, and it is not some temporary burst of motivation that comes and goes like the weather. Confidence is a weapon, a blade you either carry or have used against you. And make no mistake, the world is full of people already wielding it, slicing through hesitation, cutting through competition, and leaving behind only those who were too polite, too doubtful, too eager to be liked. From the moment you were young, society trained you not to sharpen this blade but to put it away. You were told to lower your voice, to wait your turn, to be agreeable, to apologize before you even had the chance to offend. Slowly, without realizing, you were conditioned into weakness. Not because you were born weak, but because the system benefits from obedient men. Men who hesitate, men who comply, men who beg for validation before they dare to act. The result? You do not live as a man. You live as a servant in disguise. And servants do not rule. They ask permission to exist, and that permission is granted or denied by those bold enough to take it without asking. Think of how many times you've bitten your tongue to avoid confrontation. How many times you've apologized, not because you were wrong, but because silence made you uncomfortable. How often you've adjusted your posture, your tone, your very presence, just to fit into a room you should have been dominating. Each of these small moments feels insignificant, but they are not. They are the invisible chains that bind you to a life beneath your potential. Machiavelli understood that men are shaped not by their intentions, but by their conditioning. And most men are conditioned to be tools to serve quietly, to obey without question. The tragedy is not that you are incapable. The tragedy is that you were programmed to doubt your own capability, while others, often far less talented, were programmed to move with audacity. The irony is brutal. The weaker man appears powerful, and the stronger man is dismissed, all because one carries certainty and the other carries hesitation. You see, the world does not care about your potential. It does not care about how much talent lies buried inside you. What it responds to is projection, the aura you emit before you even open your mouth. A man who looks certain is trusted before he proves himself. A man who looks hesitant is doubted before he has the chance to reveal his worth. This is why Machiavelli insisted that rulers must appear decisive even when uncertain, must project control even when chaos surrounds them. Because power is perception, and perception is everything. If you do not control how you are perceived, you will always be controlled by those who do. The confidence you lack is not a missing talent or a missing resource. It is the result of a mental script written for you by others. Teachers, parents, bosses, society at large, all taught you to ask, to seek permission, to soften yourself in the hope of being accepted. But here is the truth: accepted men are not feared, and men who are not feared are never truly respected. This is the breaking point, the realization you must carve into your mind. You were not born to serve. You were trained to serve, and training can be undone. The hesitation you feel is not your identity. It is the voice of the servant inside you, begging you to stay small, begging you to avoid risk, begging you to please the room. If you keep listening to that voice, you will die a servant, no matter how much potential you once had. But if you silence it, if you kill it, you will awaken something far more dangerous. You will awaken the ruler. And once the ruler rises, hesitation no longer dictates your life. You stop asking. You stop apologizing. You stop waiting for approval. Instead, you command, you declare, you move as if power already belongs to you. And the shocking truth, the world will believe it. Because in the game of power, perception is not a reflection of reality, it is reality. And once you carry yourself as if you deserve it, no one will question it. They will only follow. Here is where the transformation begins. Not with comfort, not with slow progress, but with inversion. Every time your instinct tells you to shrink, you must expand. When your body urges you to apologize, you must remain silent. When your mind pushes you to explain yourself, you must resist and simply stare. This inversion is the weapon Machiavelli himself would have demanded, because power is never gained by doing what feels safe. Dangerous confidence does not come from waiting until you feel ready. It comes from defying the inner servant who has been programmed to keep you invisible. Think about it. The servant inside you wants nothing more than to be tolerated, to blend in, to avoid risk. But blending in makes you replaceable. Being tolerated makes you disposable. And avoiding risk ensures that every crown, every throne, every opportunity will pass to someone else who was bold enough to seize it. If you want dangerous confidence, you must invert every instinct that has kept you weak. You must act against the programming. That is the first strike in your war for control. Confidence at this level is not a mindset. It is an identity. And an identity is not formed in your thoughts but in your actions, repeated with ruthless consistency. You cannot simply tell yourself, "I am confident," and expect the world to obey. The world does not respond to words whispered in your head. It responds to presence, posture, silence, tone. Dangerous confidence is built each time you choose expansion over retreat, stillness over explanation, certainty over hesitation. And like steel forged in fire, your identity hardens each time you refuse to yield to the inner servant. Over time, the inversion becomes natural. What once felt uncomfortable becomes instinct. The urge to shrink dies. The urge to apologize disappears, and in its place emerges the cold clarity of a man who no longer waits for validation because he has killed the part of himself that needed it. Machiavelli himself warned that men who depend on kindness and approval are nothing more than tools in the hands of others. Tools are used until they break, then discarded without ceremony. But the man who projects certainty cannot be used. He becomes the one who uses others. This is why dangerous confidence must be more than temporary courage. It must become the very way you exist. You stop speaking to be understood, and you start speaking to be obeyed. You stop moving to be accepted, and you start moving as if the world was built to make space for you. This inversion changes everything, because once you live this way, others recalibrate themselves around you. They treat you not as one of many, but as the one who sets the standard. Do not misunderstand. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud, insecure, easily shaken. Dangerous confidence is silent, calm, deliberate. It does not shout to be heard. It does not explain to be accepted. It does not beg for understanding. It simply exists with the weight of inevitability. When you walk into a room, you do not announce yourself. You simply enter, and the atmosphere shifts because your identity radiates through your posture, your stillness, your certainty. Others feel it before you speak. That is what it means to invert your conditioning. The servant wanted to be liked. The ruler demands to be respected without saying a word. And the paradox is this: once you kill the need to be liked, you will be respected far more than you ever imagined. Because respect is not given to those who ask. It is given to those who no longer care whether it comes or not. That is the identity you must forge. Not motivational, not temporary, but permanent. From servant to ruler. From invisible to untouchable. From hesitant to dangerously confident. Dangerous confidence begins not in what you say, but in how you carry yourself when you believe no one is watching. A man's presence is his loudest declaration, long before his mouth ever opens. And here lies a truth most men never learn. Posture is politics. Movement is psychology. Stillness is dominance. From the moment you step into a room, you are broadcasting signals that everyone subconsciously reads. Walk too fast and you reveal nervous energy. Speak too quickly and you expose desperation to be heard. Fill silence with constant chatter, and you mark yourself as someone desperate for relevance. Predators do none of these things. Predators move slowly, not because they are weak, but because they are in no hurry. They do not rush to prove themselves, because proving oneself is the burden of prey, not of rulers. When you slow your walk, when you hold silence, when you sit without fidgeting, you are telling the world that you are in control of your space, your time, and your outcome. And whether they admit it or not, everyone around you feels it. The timid man believes that words are his weapon, so he drowns others in explanations, in stories, in desperate attempts to show his value. But the confident man understands that silence is sharper than any speech. Every word he withholds creates tension. Every pause he chooses builds weight. When he finally speaks, the room leans forward. Not because his words are complex, but because his restraint has made them rare. Machiavelli knew this truth well. In the royal courts of Renaissance Italy, power often did not belong to the king who spoke the loudest, but to the quiet man in the corner who spoke rarely. And yet when he did, every noble leaned in to listen. Silence is not weakness. It is pressure. And when combined with presence, it becomes control. Think about the men you have seen who dominate a room without saying much. Their movements are calculated, their stillness unshakable. They do not rush to respond. They do not rush to fill space. They let others trip over themselves with chatter while they absorb, observe, and calculate. Every second they remain silent, the others reveal more. Insecurities, desires, weaknesses. The timid man believes dominance comes from being louder, but the strategist knows dominance comes from being colder, calmer, and infinitely more patient. Predators wait until their prey reveals its vulnerability. Then and only then do they strike. The same is true of confidence. It is not in the constant display of energy, but in the restraint, in the ability to do nothing and still command everything. This is why dangerous confidence must become physical as much as mental. Your shoulders pulled back, your chest lifted, not exaggerated but firm, your eyes steady, unflinching, willing to hold silence until the other person breaks, your movements deliberate, your walk slow enough to signal that you have nowhere to rush because the room already belongs to you. Presence is gravity, and when you master it, People orbit around you without knowing why. They lower their voice when you enter. They measure their words more carefully. They adjust themselves to your tempo, not because you demanded it, but because your aura has already shifted the atmosphere. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said appearances are more powerful than truth. The truth is, you may not yet have mastery over everything, but if you appear unshakable, the world treats you as if you do. And once the world treats you that way, you are already halfway to becoming it. There is a Machiavellian law of speech that few ever master. Never speak like you are asking for permission. Most men fall into the trap of soft language, of words designed to be accepted rather than obeyed. They lace their sentences with hesitation, with disclaimers, with nervous laughter, with phrases like "I think," "maybe," "I could be wrong." Each of these is a death sentence for authority. They are not words, they are apologies in disguise. They tell the world, "I am not certain, I am not in control, I am begging for acceptance." And the world responds exactly as it should. It dismisses them. A Machiavellian mind knows this. People do not follow truth. They follow conviction. They follow the sound of certainty, the weight of a voice that carries no doubt, no retreat, no escape hatch. If you want to be dangerously confident, your speech must evolve from the chatter of a servant into the decree of a ruler. Consider how judges speak. They do not say, "I think the verdict is," if they declare, "The court finds you guilty." Generals do not say, "Maybe we should attack." They state, "We strike at dawn." Kings do not speak in suggestions. Their words carry finality. This is the model you must adopt even in everyday conversation. Your sentences must feel like decisions, not discussions. Every word you choose must sound as if it cannot be questioned, not because you are always right, but because your tone makes others unwilling to challenge you. And here lies the true secret. When people stop challenging you, they start obeying you. Machiavelli knew that power does not always belong to the man with the best plan. It belongs to the man who convinces others that his plan is inevitable. The timid man sabotages himself with explanations. He feels the need to prove, to justify, to soften his ideas so others won't be offended. But in doing so, he empties his speech of all strength. His words dissolve into noise, easily forgotten, easily ignored. The confident man does the opposite. He speaks less, but when he does, he burns softness to the ground. No filler, no apologies, no wasted breath. He says what he means and leaves it in the air like a weapon, daring others to confront it. And most won't. Silence after strong words is like a blade pressed against the throat. It paralyzes. The listener is forced to deal with the weight of the statement, and more often than not, they submit. That is the psychological gravity of dangerous confidence. To speak as if you cannot be denied. Understand this. Your voice is not just sound. It is a signal of hierarchy. People instantly read it, consciously or not. A high, rushed, nervous tone signals weakness. A slow, calm, grounded tone signals dominance. If you want to rise in power, you must train your voice to carry weight. Lower your pitch, slow your tempo. Remove nervous energy. Speak like a man who has nothing to prove and everything under control. Speak like someone who already knows his words will shape the outcome. Because here is the Machiavellian truth. The content of your speech matters less than the certainty with which it is delivered. If you sound unshakable, people will assume you are right. If you sound hesitant, they will assume you are wrong, even if you are correct. This is why rulers, generals, and strategists throughout history mastered not just what to say, but how to say it. Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, each of them understood that a commander's tone could win or lose battles before swords were ever drawn. Machiavelli himself warned that power is fragile when your voice reveals doubt. To maintain control, you must strip your words of fragility. Never say, "I just wanted to add," or "I don't know if this makes sense," but burn those phrases forever. Replace them with declarations, with sharp final words that leave no space for argument. And when you finish speaking, stop. Do not rush to fill the silence. Let it hang, let it press on the room. Let it remind everyone that your words are not suggestions, but conclusions. That silence will do more for your authority than 1,000 explanations ever could. Confidence without control is nothing more than decoration. It may impress the shallow, but it will always collapse under pressure. You can walk tall, You can speak with authority. You can even command a room for a moment. But if a single insult can trigger you, if a compliment can soften you, if silence can make you spiral, then your so-called confidence is a mask, and masks crack under weight. Machiavelli understood this in the courts of power. He watched men who dressed like rulers, spoke like rulers, postured like rulers, and yet they were puppets, their strings pulled by anyone who knew how to manipulate their emotions. That is why he warned, the man who cannot master his inner world will always be ruled by others, no matter how much he pretends to rule himself. Think of it like this. The moment someone can predict your reaction, you are exposed. If they know anger will make you lash out, they can provoke you into mistakes. If they know praise will make you compliant, they can flatter you into submission. If they know silence makes you nervous, they can withhold attention until you beg for it. Every emotional trigger you carry is a leash around your neck, and those who understand human nature know exactly how to pull it. Most men are easy to control because they are predictable. A whisper of disrespect makes them explode. A kind word makes them obedient. A rejection makes them desperate. They believe they are free, but in reality, they are slaves. Slaves to every voice outside themselves. True dangerous confidence begins where this slavery ends. It begins when you become unreachable, when your emotions no longer belong to anyone else, when insults glance off you like blades against armor, when compliments land but never shift your direction, when silence becomes your weapon, not your wound. This is not the absence of emotion. You still feel anger, joy, pain, desire, but you no longer bleed those feelings into the room for others to see. You keep them hidden, cold, weaponized. You use them when they serve you and bury them when they don't. That is psychological armor. That is what makes you untouchable. Imagine a man who cannot be provoked, a man who does not rise when baited, does not flinch when ignored, does not crumble when rejected. Imagine the fear he inspires. Because power is not about noise, it is about stability. People trust what they cannot move, they respect what they cannot shake, and they fear what they cannot control. Dangerous confidence is not loudness, it is gravity. It is the invisible weight behind your presence, the aura that tells everyone, I will not be moved. That aura does not come from shouting, from boasting, or from constant displays of dominance. It comes from composure, from restraint, from the terrifying calm of a man who is always calculating, never reacting. This is where most men fail. They master the surface, the posture, the voice, the presence. They can look the part. But beneath the surface, they are still fragile. Their emotions are still owned by anyone willing to manipulate them. And so, no matter how tall they stand, they will eventually break. Dangerous confidence, the kind Machiavelli spoke of, demands more. It demands mastery of the invisible war. The war inside your own mind. Until you win that war, you are nothing more than a decorated servant. But once you do, once you take control of your reactions, once you strip the world of its power to trigger you, you are no longer decoration. You are fortress. You are weapon. You are untouchable. Rejection. For most men, the word itself feels like a wound. They see rejection as humiliation, as proof that they were not enough, as evidence that they should have stayed small. But this is the greatest mistake a man can make. Rejection is not defeat. It is intelligence. It is raw, unfiltered data about how the world perceives your value in that moment. And if you understand how to weaponize it, rejection becomes one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal. Machiavelli himself hinted at this truth. Fortune favors the bold, but it also exposes the weak. Every rejection you face is not the world closing its doors. It is the world showing you exactly where you stand, who underestimates you, and who dares to treat your presence as optional. This is not an insult. This is information. And in the hands of a strategist, information is everything. Think of the average man when he is rejected. A woman says no, and he spirals into self-doubt. A job denies him, and he convinces himself he is unworthy. A friend excludes him, and he begins to chase their approval harder than before. This is programming, not power. Rejection exposes his emotional dependence, and those who understand human nature know how to exploit this weakness endlessly. But a Machiavellian mind interprets rejection differently. When someone rejects you, They are telling you that they believe they can survive without you. That is not a wound, it is clarity. It means you now know exactly where they stand, exactly how they calculate your worth, and exactly where they fail to see your value. That knowledge is priceless because it allows you to reposition, to evolve, and eventually to strike when they least expect it. The first rule of rejection is this: never appear affected. The moment you show pain, they win. Not because they actually gained power, but because you gave them proof that you depend on their acceptance. That dependence is death. So when rejection comes, you do not react, you evolve. You shift colder. You withdraw your presence. You allow absence to do what words never could. Because presence is felt, but absence is feared. The man who was too available, too accessible, too obvious, suddenly vanishes. And in that void, others feel the weight of what they have lost. They begin to question if they miscalculated, if they underestimated, if they gave up something they should have valued. That doubt eats at them, and you, in silence, become more powerful than you ever were in presence. This is why rejection must never be treated as personal. It is not about you as a man. It is about position. People reject what they believe they can afford to lose. Let them. Because one day, when your value is undeniable, when your presence commands the room they once denied you, they will feel the cost of their decision, and you will not need to punish them. The world itself will punish them with the contrast between what they once rejected and what you have now become. Machiavelli said men should be treated either generously or destroyed, because slight injuries provoke revenge, but overwhelming absence provokes fear. So do not seek petty revenge. Do not chase. Do not beg. Simply vanish and build. Build so coldly, so silently, that when you return, your very existence becomes a reminder of how badly they misjudged you. The second rule of rejection is to reframe it, not for them, but for yourself. Do not say, "I was rejected." Say instead, "I have removed myself from something too small for me." This reframing shifts your psychology from victim to ruler. You did not lose access. You granted it once, they failed to recognize its value, and now it is gone. That is not rejection, it is disqualification. You did not fail to win them, they failed to keep you. That subtle shift in perception turns rejection from a wound into a weapon. Because once you stop seeing yourself as someone denied, you begin to see yourself as someone who denies others. And that identity is the foundation of dangerous confidence. Rejection is not the end. It is the test. It is the filter that separates men who collapse under pressure from men who sharpen themselves against it. If you treat rejection as a mirror, it shows you exactly what must be destroyed inside yourself. The need to be understood, the hunger to be validated, the craving to be chosen. Kill those, and rejection loses its power. Embrace those, and rejection will rule you for the rest of your life. The choice is yours. Be the man who is broken by rejection, or be the man who weaponizes it into control. Absence is not emptiness. Absence is a weapon. Most men fear being forgotten, so they cling, they chase, they insist on being noticed. They beg with presence because they believe silence will erase them. But here is the Machiavellian truth. Presence can make you common, but absence makes you unforgettable. When you withdraw strategically, when you vanish without explanation, you transform from something taken for granted into something people cannot stop thinking about. It is not your presence that carves itself into their memory. It is the weight of your disappearance. That weight is the echo of scarcity, and scarcity creates value. The weaker man floods the room with his voice, his need, his approval seeking. The stronger man understands that silence, carefully deployed, forces others to feel the cost of losing access to him. Consider the psychology of loss. When something is always available, its value decreases. The water you drink daily is necessary, but it is not precious. Yet in the desert, one drop becomes priceless. This is the law of scarcity, and it governs power as much as it governs markets. When you are always present, always explaining, always accessible, your value diminishes. You become the background, the noise, the predictable man who can always be summoned with a word. But when you withdraw, when you leave the room colder than it was before, you become the desert drop of water, rare, scarce, desired, and those who once dismissed you begin to feel the emptiness of your silence pressing on them. They realize too late what your presence meant. This is how absence shifts the balance of power without you saying a single word. Machiavelli understood this principle deeply. In the courts of Florence, rulers who made themselves too available were seen as weak. Their accessibility was read as desperation. But the man who appeared rarely, the one who entered the room only when necessary, carried an aura of inevitability. His silence demanded curiosity. His absence generated speculation, and speculation breeds fear. Because when people do not know what you are doing, where you are, or what you are planning, their imagination works harder than your presence ever could. They begin to fill in the gaps with their own fears and insecurities. Silence becomes louder than speech. Absence becomes heavier than presence. This is why you must learn to vanish strategically, not in defeat but in dominance. When rejection comes, you do not argue, you do not explain, you disappear. When insult comes, you do not defend, you do not justify, you disappear. Your withdrawal is not retreat. It is pressure. It is a reminder that you were never dependent on their approval, and now they must live with the vacuum you leave behind. And here lies the true genius of absence. While they feel your loss, you are building. While they wonder where you went, you are sharpening your edge. While they whisper about why you disappeared, you are becoming stronger, colder, untouchable. Then, when you choose to reappear, your presence lands with 10 times the weight it once had. Never underestimate the terror of absence. People fear silence because it forces them to confront themselves. They fear your absence because it exposes how much of their confidence was built on your availability. And when you return, you will not need to explain, apologize, or seek recognition. Your silence has already spoken. Your absence has already reshaped their perception of you. The man who controls absence controls imagination, and the man who controls imagination controls fear. That is why dangerous confidence is never about constant display. It is about strategic disappearance, calculated presence, and the ability to turn silence into the sharpest blade in your arsenal. This is the final transformation, the death of the servant and the birth of the ruler. For years you have carried within you a divided self, the voice that tells you to shrink, to wait, to seek permission, and the faint echo that tells you to rise, to command, to dominate. The servant voice has been louder because it was trained, conditioned, drilled into you since childhood. Teachers demanded obedience. Society rewarded compliance. Even those closest to you encouraged politeness, humility, and restraint, as if those were virtues, when in reality they were chains. You were taught to believe that being nice would win you respect. But Machiavelli knew what most men never dare admit. Nice men are not respected. They are used. They are tools in the hands of those who understand power. The servant in you lives for approval, but the ruler in you lives for control. Until you silence the servant, you will never know what it means to walk into a room and bend it with nothing but your presence. Dangerous confidence is not about pretending. Pretending is fragile. It cracks at the first sign of resistance. Dangerous confidence is about identity. And identity is forged when you no longer play both sides of yourself. You no longer negotiate between the servant and the ruler. You choose. And once the ruler is chosen, the servant must be killed. That death is not metaphorical. It is deliberate. You must hunt down every trace of the servant inside you, every thought that says, "Do they like me?" Every habit that whispers, "Play it safe," every impulse that urges, "Don't stand out." Those are not harmless tendencies. They are the chains that have kept you small, and if you don't cut them ruthlessly, they will strangle you quietly for the rest of your life. This is why dangerous confidence feels different from arrogance. Arrogance is loud. Arrogance screams for recognition because it is still secretly begging to be validated. Confidence at this level does not scream. It does not need to. It radiates with the silence of inevitability. You no longer walk into a room wondering if you belong. You walk in as if the room belongs to you, not because you said so, not because anyone crowned you, but because you carry yourself like it has always been true. And the paradox: once you behave this way, people begin to believe it. They recalibrate themselves around you. They defer, they listen, they submit, not because you asked them to, but because you no longer carry the energy of someone who could ever be denied. The servant wanted to be liked. The ruler does not care. The servant wanted to be understood. The ruler refuses to explain. The servant sought peace, acceptance, and permission. The ruler seeks only one thing: control. And when you adopt this identity fully, you become unreachable. No insult can touch you because you no longer play the game of approval. No rejection can wound you because you no longer see yourself as someone who needs access. No silence can rattle you because you understand that silence itself is power. In this state, you are no longer shaped by the room. You shape the room. You no longer adapt to others. They adapt to you. And the servant, the apologetic, obedient shadow you once carried, fades into nothingness. This is dangerous confidence. Not the shallow mask of arrogance, not the fragile performance of self-help cliches, but the cold, calculated identity of a man who has chosen to kill weakness at its root. Once the servant dies, the ruler awakens. And once the ruler awakens, he never sleeps again. You will no longer live a life of hesitation. You will no longer beg for permission. You will no longer wait to be chosen. From this moment forward, you do not fit into the world. The world reshapes itself around you. That is what it means to become untouchable. That is what it means to carry yourself as a ruler in a kingdom where most men remain slaves to doubt. Powerful men do not arrive with noise. They do not announce themselves. They arrive with presence, a silent force that bends the atmosphere without a word. And this is the first sign that you have crossed the threshold from servant to ruler. You no longer need to be loud to be felt. When you walk into a room, people sense the shift before they even turn their heads. It is not magic. It is not luck. It is the product of calculated posture, deliberate stillness, and the refusal to move as if you owe anyone an explanation. The timid man tries to dominate by raising his voice, by filling silence, by making sure he is noticed. But the man of dangerous confidence understands that silence itself is dominance. He allows others to rush, to talk, to perform, while he simply exists with gravity, waiting, calculating, observing. And the irony is this: those who try the hardest to be seen are quickly forgotten, but the one who speaks rarely, moves little, and observes much becomes unforgettable. Think about the courtroom Machiavelli studied. The king may have worn the crown, but often it was the quiet advisor in the corner, the man who barely spoke, who truly ruled the room. When he did speak, every head turned. Why? Because his silence had already built anticipation. His restraint gave his words more weight than 1,000 speeches. Silence is not absence, it is pressure. And pressure, when held long enough, forces others to break before you do. The timid man fears silence because it exposes his insecurity. He fills it with chatter to cover his lack of control. But the confident man uses silence as a weapon. He lets it stretch, he lets it hang, and in that tension, others begin to reveal themselves. They rush to fill the void with their thoughts, their insecurities, their fears. The quiet man gains everything by saying nothing, while the noisy man loses everything by saying too much. This is why you must master stillness. Every gesture must be deliberate, every movement calculated. Predators do not fidget. They do not flinch. They move with precision, because unnecessary motion betrays nervousness. When you speak, your words must sound final, but when you are silent, your stillness must be even louder. Imagine entering a room and choosing not to speak first, not to rush into proving yourself. Instead, you sit, you wait, you observe. You watch the way people compete for attention, the way they reveal their ambitions and weaknesses in their haste. And when the moment comes, you speak once, calmly, directly. You do not ask, you declare. That single moment will outweigh every frantic attempt others made to establish themselves. Because presence is not measured in words, it is measured in weight. And weight is created by restraint. The secret most men never discover is this: people are not impressed by constant activity. They are impressed by control. They are impressed by the man who could speak but chooses not to. They are impressed by the man who could rush but chooses to wait. They are impressed by the man who seems immune to the pressure that drives everyone else. That man is a threat because he cannot be read, he cannot be rushed, and he cannot be shaken. And fear of the unknown is far more powerful than fear of the obvious. This is why silence is feared more than shouting. Silence forces imagination, and imagination will always exaggerate your power far beyond anything you could say yourself. So when you enter a room, do not look for permission. Do not search for approval. Do not compete with noise. Walk in as if the air already belongs to you. Sit as if the chair was built for you. Breathe as if time moves according to your pace. Let others adjust themselves to you while you remain unshaken. That is how kings without crowns and generals without armies have ruled before. They mastered the art of presence. And once you master it, you will understand what dangerous confidence truly means. Not to control the room with words, but to control it with silence, with stillness, with the unshakable aura of a man who has already chosen himself. Words are not just sounds. They are weapons. And most men tragically use them as if they were apologies. They speak in tones that rise at the end of every sentence, like a question. They lace their thoughts with fillers. I think, maybe, sort of. They laugh nervously to soften their statements. They speak not to command, but to seek permission. And here is the brutal truth. The world does not take such men seriously. Their words dissolve before they even leave their lips. They may speak often, but they are forgotten instantly, because the tone betrays weakness before the message can carry strength. Machiavelli knew this, and he carved it into the foundation of power. People do not follow logic. They follow conviction. The man who sounds sure is assumed to be right, and the man who hesitates is assumed to be irrelevant. This is the law of speech, and if you want to master dangerous confidence, you must burn hesitation out of your voice until every word you speak lands like a decree. Consider the difference between a ruler and a servant. A servant says, "I think dinner might be ready." A ruler says, "Dinner is ready." A servant says, "Maybe we could try this." A ruler says, "We do this." The difference is not in the truth of the words, but in the weight of their delivery. Servants speak with upward tones as if begging for approval. Rulers speak with downward tones, as if stamping the ground with certainty. And people obey not because the words are flawless, but because the tone leaves no space for debate. When you speak as if your words are final, others treat them as final. When you speak as if they are open for discussion, others tear them apart. The choice is yours. Speak like the end or be treated like the beginning. And here lies the paradox. Dangerous confidence in speech is not about speaking more, it is about speaking less. The timid man tries to prove his worth with endless explanations, but in doing so, he dilutes his authority. The confident man cuts his words down to the bone. No softness, no filler, no disclaimers. He states he stops. He lets the silence do the work. Silence, after a strong statement, is a blade pressed against the throat of the room. No one wants to challenge it. No one dares to break it. They adjust themselves around it because silence forces submission. It makes others carry the weight of your certainty. Your tone must also become a weapon. Lower your pitch, slow your tempo, ground your words. A rushed voice screams desperation. A calm voice whispers dominance. Speak like a man who already knows the outcome. Speak like a man whose reality is not up for debate. Because the moment you begin to explain, to justify, to soften, you tell the world that your reality is fragile. And fragile realities are destroyed instantly. Dangerous confidence requires you to sound as if what you say is not a suggestion, it is a fact. Even if others disagree, your certainty forces them to recalibrate. They may not like you, they may not even believe you, but they will not ignore you. This is the Machiavellian art of speech. Less is stronger, silence is sharper, tone is heavier. Never say, "I just think." Never say, "I don't know if this makes sense." Burn these phrases permanently. Every time you use them, you hand over your authority. Replace them with statements that close doors, not open them. Say what you mean, stop and stare. Let the silence stretch until others break. They will. Because silence after strength is unbearable for the weak. And in that unbearable silence they submit. Not to your logic, not to your evidence, but to the sheer weight of your certainty. That is how rulers speak. That is how dangerous confidence is forged. Not in the number of words spoken, but in the weight each one carries. Your voice is more than sound. It is hierarchy made audible. Before anyone has time to analyze the meaning of your words, They have already judged you by the way your voice carries them. The nervous man reveals his weakness in milliseconds. His pitch rises, his tempo quickens, his tone stumbles, betraying uncertainty before he even finishes his thought. The world does not wait to examine his logic. It dismisses him instantly. And this is where most men fail. They spend their lives sharpening their ideas but never sharpening their delivery. They believe that content alone will make them powerful. But Machiavelli would laugh at this naivety. He knew that perception rules over truth. And perception is carried less by what you say and more by how you sound saying it. People rarely remember exact words, but they never forget the weight of a voice that carried certainty. A commanding voice is not loud. Loudness is often the mark of insecurity. The man who yells is usually the man who fears he is not being heard. True, dangerous confidence is quiet, but immovable. It is calm, deliberate, and grounded. It speaks slowly, not because it doubts, but because it owns time. It speaks with a lower pitch, not because it forces depth, but because it signals gravity. This is why leaders, generals, and rulers across history were trained not just in rhetoric, but in tone. Alexander the Great, Caesar, Napoleon, all understood that their words were weapons, but the weapon only worked if the voice carrying it struck like steel, not like paper. Even if the content was ordinary, their tone made it undeniable. That is the power you must master. The timid man says, "I think we should try this." The confident man says, "We do this." The timid man says, "I don't know if this makes sense." The confident man says, "This is what happens." Notice how the words themselves are not radically different. The power lies in the delivery. A man with a weak tone could recite the sharpest truth and still be ignored. A man with a commanding tone could speak ordinary sentences and still be obeyed. Why? Because people are emotional, not logical. They do not submit to content, they submit to conviction. And conviction is transmitted first and foremost in the voice. This is why your tone must be forged like armor. Remove every trace of softness, every sign of nervous laughter, every desperate upward inflection. Train yourself to slow down, to lower your pitch, to breathe before you speak. Speak as if the air in the room is yours, and the world has no choice but to wait for you. This does not mean arrogance. It does not mean shouting. It means owning stillness, owning tempo, owning gravity. When you speak like this, people do not analyze your words, they adjust to them. They align themselves with your certainty because it is easier than resisting it. And this is the Machiavellian truth. Reality bends around conviction. Do not forget, your tone is your hierarchy. Every time you open your mouth, you are announcing where you stand in the invisible ladder of dominance. If your tone wavers, you place yourself at the bottom. If your tone is cold, steady, deliberate, you rise instantly above others, even before your argument begins. And once you are above them in tone, you are above them in influence. They may have better ideas, but they will defer to you. They may secretly disagree, but they will not challenge you. Because the weight of your certainty has already decided the outcome. This is why a Machiavellian strategist masters his voice. Because once you master tone, you do not need to win debates. You do not need to prove your case. Your tone itself ends the discussion before it begins. Never defend, never justify, never explain. These are not suggestions, they are laws. The moment you defend yourself, you place yourself beneath the one who accused you. The moment you justify your choices, you signal that their judgment matters more than your authority. The moment you explain, you admit that your reality is negotiable, and reality, once negotiated, is no longer power. Machiavelli understood this clearly. A prince who wastes time explaining himself to the people proves that he is not their master but their servant. If your words require justification, they were not spoken with enough weight to stand on their own. A man of dangerous confidence never bargains with doubt. His words are not proposals, they are decrees. Think of the contrast. The weak man is desperate to be understood. He fills every silence with clarifications, with excuses, with endless attempts to prove that he meant well. But the confident man knows this. Silence is stronger than any justification. When someone challenges him, he does not scramble to defend. He simply says, "I disagree," or better, "That's incorrect." Then he moves on. No wasted energy, no desperate attempt to be liked, no bleeding of authority through endless explanation. That cold dismissal is far more powerful than any speech, because it signals something terrifying. My reality is not up for debate. Once you embody this, people learn quickly that challenging you is pointless, because you will never step down into their level of justification. This is the psychology of authority. When you explain, you hand over control of the frame. You allow them to define the terms, and you scramble to respond. But when you refuse to explain, when you remain firm and final, you keep the frame in your hands. The room adjusts to you. They may not like your statement, but they cannot move it. They cannot soften it. They cannot weaken it. It simply remains immovable, like stone. And here is where most men fail. They crave understanding. They crave acceptance, so they explain. But acceptance is a chain, and explanation is the lock that binds it around your neck. Break the chain by refusing to explain. Let your words stand alone, unshaken. History is filled with men who understood this principle. Leaders who shaped nations, generals who commanded armies, rulers who bent courts to their will. They did not waste breath defending themselves to those beneath them. They did not pause to soften their decisions for the sake of popularity. They knew that power is eroded not by mistakes, but by explanations. Because the moment you explain, you reveal uncertainty. And once uncertainty leaks into the room, authority evaporates. Machiavelli's counsel was clear. Rulers must be decisive, not because they are always right, but because indecision and defense breed contempt. Confidence is not about being correct. It is about being untouchable. So when you are challenged, resist the urge to explain. Replace it with finality. Say no, say that's wrong. Say nothing at all, and let silence do the work. And then move forward as if the challenge never mattered, because in truth, it doesn't. By refusing to defend, you deny the challenger the very thing they sought: your energy, your validation, your attention. Instead, you conserve all of it for yourself, leaving them to wither in the shadow of your cold indifference. That indifference is the most terrifying power of all, because it teaches the world a lesson they will never forget. You cannot be moved, you cannot be baited, you cannot be controlled. And once people know this about you, they stop trying to bend you. They begin bending themselves instead. Confidence without control is decoration. Presence without identity is theater. Words without weight are noise. You have now seen the difference between the servant and the ruler, between the man who waits and the man who commands, between the voice that begs to be understood and the voice that cannot be denied. This transformation is not about adopting a mask. It is about killing the part of you that was trained to serve. The servant inside you was conditioned to seek approval, to ask for permission, to soften every word and every action until nothing dangerous remained. But you are not meant to be harmless. Harmless men are ignored, overlooked, and discarded. The world does not respect what it does not fear. And the moment you stop asking to be accepted is the moment you become untouchable. Understand this. Dangerous confidence is not arrogance, it is inevitability. It is walking into a room as if the floor already belongs to you. It is speaking as if your words are not opinions but decrees. It is moving slower, calmer, colder, because predators do not rush and rulers do not beg. It is silence stretched into a weapon, absence turned into pressure, rejection reframed into control. Dangerous confidence is not about being liked. It is about making others recalibrate themselves around you, whether they want to or not. When they respect you, it is useful. When they fear you, it is better. But when they realize they cannot move you, that is when you cross into the realm of the unforgettable. From this moment forward, you do not need to prove yourself. You do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to defend yourself. You are no longer shaped by others. You shape them. You are no longer moved by their words. You move them with your silence. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You have already chosen yourself. That is the final stage of power. That is the birth of the ruler within you. And once the ruler awakens, there is no going back. You will carry this identity into every room, every interaction, every silence, and people will feel it, they will bend to it, they will fear it, and they will remember it long after you are gone. So here is your final command. Stop waiting, stop hesitating, stop softening, kill the servant, awaken the ruler. Walk into every room as if you already own it. Speak as if your words are not suggestions, but final judgments. Move as if time itself follows your pace, and above all remain unreachable, because the man who cannot be moved is the man who cannot be controlled. That is dangerous confidence. That is Machiavellian power. If you are ready to stop chasing approval and start commanding respect, then act now. Like this video, not as an act of support, but as a declaration that you are done living as a servant. Subscribe to this channel, The Cold Strategist, if you are ready to reforge yourself into the kind of man who cannot be bent, cannot be predicted, and cannot be forgotten. Because this is not motivation, this is not inspiration, this is war. And today, you just became a weapon.